Captain pressed her face against the cracked viewport of the mining vessel Persistence, watching the sleek alien ship circle her damaged craft like vultures around carrion. The fleet moved with predatory grace, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with contemptuous patterns that her translator couldn't quite interpret, but she didn't need technology to understand mockery. "Captain, they're hailing us again," Communications Officer Martinez called from his station, voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Put them through. Let's hear what they have to say this time." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the angular features of High Admiral, his silver skin marked with the ritual scars of countless victories. His four eyes regarded the human bridge crew with obvious disdain, like a collector examining particularly unimpressive specimens. "Humans," the alien's voice carried the weight of absolute authority, "your pathetic vessel intrudes upon space. Surrender immediately, and perhaps we will grant you the mercy of a swift death rather than the slow agony you deserve for your presumption." Stood slowly, her weathered hands gripping the command chair. At 53, she'd seen enough of the galaxy to know when someone was underestimating her species. The Persistence might look like a wreck to these advanced aliens, but appearances could be deceiving. "High Admiral," she replied, keeping her voice steady, "we're just a mining ship. Our FTL drive malfunctioned and dropped us out of hyperspace. We're not looking for trouble." His laughter was like breaking glass. "Mining ship? This rust bucket is barely held together by hope and desperation. Your species builds vessels that would shame our children's toys. Look around you, human. Do you see any asteroids to mine here? Any reason for your presence except invasion?" Glanced at her tactical display. They were indeed far from any mining zones, deep in what the Galactic Council had recently designated as territory following their latest conquest. 3 more species had fallen to the Empire in the past decade, their worlds now serving as agricultural colonies for the expanding alien civilization. "Our navigation systems were damaged in the same incident that crippled our drive," explained. "We're lost, not invading." "Lost?" Eyes narrowed. "How convenient. Your species has a reputation for lies and deception. The Galactic Council speaks of human ingenuity and adaptability as if these were virtues, but we know better. You are scavengers, barely worthy of the designation sentient." Behind, she heard Engineer's sharp intake of breath. The old Russian had spent 40 years keeping broken ships running with nothing but spare parts and stubbornness. If anyone understood the insult implicit in his words, it was him. "Admiral," said carefully, "we have no quarrel with your people. If you'll allow us to repair our drive, we'll leave your space immediately." "Repair?" Amusement was palpable. "With what? Your ship is a monument to technological inadequacy. Our scanners show hull breaches sealed with metal patches, jury-rigged systems running on backup power, and engines that should have failed decades ago. It's a miracle you've survived this long in that flying scrapyard." The alien admiral gestured dismissively. "However, we are not without mercy. We will offer your crew positions as laborers on our agricultural worlds. Your ship, such as it is, will be recycled for raw materials. It's more than your pathetic vessel deserves." Felt the familiar fire building in her chest, the same anger that had driven her from the asteroid mining colonies to the deep space freight runs, always pushing further into the unknown. "And if we refuse?" "Then you will learn why 17 species bow before the Empire," replied coldly. "Your weapons are primitive, your defenses laughable. We have crushed civilizations far more advanced than yours with ease. What hope does one broken human vessel have against the might of our fleet?" Looked around her bridge. Martinez was young, barely 25, fresh from the Merchant Marine Academy. Had he'd never met, having spent his life in the engine rooms of ships like this one. Dr. Sarah in medical was brilliant, but had chosen the frontier life to escape the politics of core world research. None of them deserved to die because some alien empire saw humans as inferior. "You're right," said finally. "Our ship is old. It's patched together with hope and desperation. Our weapons are primitive, our technology inadequate by your standards." His expression showed satisfaction. "Finally, wisdom, signal your surrender and—" "But," continued, her voice hardening, "you've made one crucial mistake, Admiral." The alien's eyes narrowed dangerously. "And what mistake is that, human?" Smiled, and for the first time since the conversation began, she saw uncertainty flicker across features. "You've never seen what humans can do when you back us into a corner." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Battle stations. Martinez, send a message to Earth Command. Full emergency protocol. How much power can you give me? The engineer's weathered face split into a fierce grin. Captain, this old lady's got more fight left in her than they know. Give me 5 minutes. Sarah, prep the medical bay. Start jamming their communications. I don't want them calling for reinforcements until we're ready. As her crew rushed to their stations, studied the tactical display. 8 cruisers, each one faster, better armed, and more advanced than her single mining vessel. By any reasonable assessment, they were doomed. But had learned long ago that reasonable assessments didn't account for human stubbornness. The Persistence shuddered as rerouted power from non-essential systems. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red as the ship's ancient fusion reactor strained to provide energy to systems that hadn't been used in anger for decades. Captain, Martinez called out, they're moving to attack formation. Energy signatures are spiking across their fleet. Let them come, muttered, her fingers dancing across her command console. The mining ship might be old, but it was human-built, which meant every system had backups, and every backup had been modified, improved, and jury-rigged by generations of engineers who understood that space was trying to kill you every second of every day. The first energy blast struck their forward shields, and the Persistence bucked like an angry horse. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, but the ship held together. Return fire, ordered. The mining ship's weapons were indeed primitive by galactic standards. Old plasma cannons designed for asteroid braking, not ship-to-ship combat. But primitive didn't mean ineffective, especially when wielded by someone who understood their true potential. The plasma burst struck the lead cruiser's shields and dissipated harmlessly, just as had expected. But she wasn't trying to damage them, not yet. She was testing their defenses, learning their patterns, buying time for to work his magic in the engine room. Their shields are adaptive, Martinez reported. They're automatically adjusting to counter our weapon frequencies. Perfect, replied, confusing her communications officer. Remember what we used to do in the asteroid belt when we hit a particularly stubborn rock. Understanding dawned on Martinez's face. Resonance mining, but Captain, that's never been tried against shields. First time for everything, said. How's our power situation? The engineer's voice crackled over the intercom. I've got the reactor running at 110%. Any higher and we'll be joining the cosmic background radiation. That'll do. Sarah, stand by for some serious bumps. His fingers found the mining control interface, a system that hadn't been touched since they'd last worked the Belter asteroid 6 months ago. Mining ships were designed to crack open asteroids and extract their valuable contents, a process that required precise control over massive energies and the ability to find weak points in seemingly solid structures. The cruisers closed in, their bioluminescent hulls now pulsing with aggressive red patterns. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered prey that fought back effectively. Activated the mining array's deep scan function, normally used to analyze asteroid composition. Instead, she focused it on the lead cruiser's shield matrix, watching as the computer built a detailed picture of the energy field's harmonic frequencies. There, she whispered, spotting the tiny fluctuation that betrayed a resonance point in the alien technology. Transmit these coordinates to the weapon array. I need a 30-second power spike to the plasma cannons. Captain, that could burn out the entire system, protested. Only if we miss, replied grimly. The Persistence shook under another barrage from the fleet. Their shields were failing and could smell the acrid smoke of burning circuits. They had one shot at this. Firing, Martinez announced. The plasma cannons discharged their entire energy reserve in a focused burst aimed not at the cruiser's hull, but at a specific point in its shield matrix. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship's shields collapsed in a cascade failure as the resonance frequency tore through their energy matrix like a virus. The cruiser, suddenly naked before the void, erupted in a brilliant explosion as its own weapon's energy feedback destroyed it from within. The remaining ships stopped their advance, confusion evident in their formation. They had never seen such a tactic, never imagined that primitive human mining technology could be turned against their advanced defenses. Allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before reality reasserted itself. They had destroyed one ship, but 7 remained, and the Persistence was running on fumes and prayer. "Are you getting that message through to Earth Command?" "Negative, Captain. Their jamming is too strong, and our transmitter isn't powerful enough to punch through." Nodded grimly. They were on their own, just as humans had always been when the galaxy got dangerous. But that was fine. Humans had been on their own before. As the fleet regrouped and began another attack run, noticed something on her displays that made her smile. The aliens were being more cautious now, maintaining greater distance, their formation and more defensive. They were learning to fear the little human mining ship. That was their second mistake. Called down to engineering. "Remember that modification you wanted to try on the excavation charges?" "The one you said was too dangerous for responsible miners," came the reply. "That's the one. How long do you need?" "Give me 10 minutes, Captain, but you're not going to like what happens to our hull integrity." "I stopped caring about hull integrity the moment they called us scavengers," said. "Sarah, seal the medical bay and prepare for decompression events. Plot us a course directly at their flagship." Martinez looked at his captain in alarm. "Direct course? Captain, that's Admiral's ship. It's twice our size and armed with enough firepower to glass a small moon." "I'm counting on it," replied. "The bigger they are, the more spectacular they fall." The Persistence lurched forward under maximum acceleration, its ancient engines screaming in protest as pushed every system beyond safe limits. Behind them, the fleet scrambled to react to what appeared to be a desperate suicide run. But wasn't planning to die today. She was planning to show these alien conquerors exactly what human ingenuity could accomplish when backed into a corner. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had earned its reputation for surviving the impossible, one improvised solution at a time. The Persistence hurtled toward the flagship like a meteor with a death wish, felt the deck plates vibrating under her feet as pushed the ancient mining ship beyond every safety protocol ever written. In the engine room, she knew the old Russian was performing miracles with prayer and 4 decades of experience keeping impossible machines running. "Captain, they're locking weapons," Martinez reported, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Multiple targeting systems painting us from all directions." Watch the tactical display as the fleet spread out in a classic engagement pattern, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with coordinated attack sequences. Admiral's flagship, the Dominion's Edge, was a kilometer-long predator that could crack planets. By any reasonable assessment, the tiny human mining ship charging straight at it should have been vaporized already. But they weren't firing yet. They were curious, realized. The destruction of their scout cruiser using unknown technology had made them cautious. They wanted to understand what the humans were doing before they ended this charade. That curiosity would cost them. "Open a channel to the flagship," ordered. "Let's give the Admiral something to think about." His face appeared on screen, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. "Human Captain, your suicidal charge accomplishes nothing. Surrender now and we will make your death swift." "Admiral," replied conversationally, "before we all die horrible deaths, I'm curious about something. How many species have surrendered to you without a fight?" The alien's expression showed confusion at the unexpected question. 12 of the 17 we have conquered submitted immediately upon seeing our fleet. Why do you ask irrelevant questions in your final moments?" "Just wondering," said. "You see, humans have this saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. I don't think you've ever fought a dog before, Admiral." Before could respond, cut the transmission and activated the ship's internal communications. "All hands, this is the captain. In about 3 minutes, we're going to do something that's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. Secure everything that isn't bolted down and bolt down everything else." She turned to Martinez. "Remember our emergency protocols from the Belter mining runs. The ones specifically designed for asteroid hollow-out operations." Martinez's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Captain, those were designed for stationary targets." "Everything's stationary if you match velocity," replied with a grin that would have made a shark nervous. "Please tell me you've got those excavation charges ready." The engineer's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible over the screaming protests of overstressed machinery. "Captain, I've modified every mining charge we have. The blast yield is now approximately 50 times normal specifications. But Captain..." "But what?" The delivery system was never designed for this kind of stress. We get one shot, and if it doesn't work, then we'll crack our hull like an egg. Studied the tactical display. The flagship was 3,000 kilometers away and closing fast as the fleet moved to intercept her apparent suicide run. Secondary ships were positioning themselves to catch any debris after the Persistence was destroyed. "Sarah, how's our structural integrity?" Doctor's voice came from the medical bay, where she was treating injured crew members from the earlier battle damage. "We've got microfractures along the port hull. The starboard fusion coupling is showing stress signs, and I'm pretty sure the artificial gravity is running on nothing but good intentions at this point." "So normal operating conditions for a mining ship," observed. "Initiate the modification sequence." Throughout the ship, automated systems began reconfiguring the mining equipment for its deadly new purpose. The excavation charges, normally used to plant precisely controlled explosives deep within asteroid cores, were being modified into something that had never been tested, never been imagined by their designers. The Persistence was becoming a weapon. "Captain," Martinez called out, "the flagship is altering course. They're trying to maintain distance while the escort ships move to flank us." Nodded. "They're learning. That's unfortunate. Execute evasive pattern Delta 7. The mining ship suddenly jinked hard to starboard, then rolled inverted and dove toward the galactic plane. The maneuver would have been impossible for a purpose-built warship, but the Persistence had been designed for the chaotic environment of asteroid mining, where obstacles came from all directions without warning. Energy beams lanced through the space where they had been moments before. The aliens were firing now, but their targeting systems were having trouble tracking the erratically moving mining vessel. Warships moved in predictable patterns. Miners moved like drunken bees. "Distance to flagship?" asked. 800 kilometers and closing," Martinez reported. "But Captain, their escort ships are moving to intercept. We won't make it through their screen." Smiled grimly. "Who said anything about going through them?" She activated the mining ship's cargo handling system, a network of mechanical arms and launch tubes designed for moving ore and equipment in zero gravity, but had modified more than just the excavation charges. "Remember how we used to clear debris fields in the belt?" Martinez's face paled. "Captain, that's never been attempted in combat." "First time for everything," replied. "Launch the spread." The Persistence suddenly sprouted a dozen metallic objects from its cargo bays, each one following a different trajectory toward the intercepting escort ships. They must have looked like desperate attempts at ramming attacks or primitive missiles. They were wrong. Each object was a modified cargo pod filled with mining equipment, navigation beacons, and industrial-grade magnetic grapples. As they approached the alien ships, the pods activated their magnetic systems and locked onto the hulls with the inexorable grip of equipment designed to handle 1,000-ton asteroids in zero gravity. "Now's ordered." Every cargo pod simultaneously activated its emergency beacon at full power. The ships found themselves suddenly broadcasting human distress signals on every frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum, their own communication systems overwhelmed by the cacophony. In the confusion, the Persistence slipped past the escort screen like a minnow through a net. "Brilliant," Admiral's voice came over the channel, tinged with what might have been respect. "Primitive but effective. However, your cleverness only delays the inevitable. You now face the Dominion's edge alone." Looked at the massive flagship filling her. Its weapons were already charging, and she could see launch bays opening to disgorge fighters. Even damaged and running on improvised repairs, the flagship was more than a match for her mining vessel. "Status on the excavation system." "Ready, Captain, but we need to be within 50 meters for optimal penetration." 50 meters. Looked at the tactical display showing the flagship's defensive grid. Getting that close to a kilometer-long warship would require flying directly into the teeth of its weapons systems. Plot a course along their ventral hull. Use the sensor shadows from their own weapon arrays. "Captain, that's impossible. No pilot could." Interrupted gently. "I didn't spend 20 years flying mining runs in the asteroid belt to be told what's impossible by a warship. Plot the course." The young communications officer's hands flew over his console. "Course plotted, Captain, but the margin for error is less than 10 meters." 10 meters is plenty, said, taking manual control of the flight systems. Everyone hold on. The Persistence dove toward the flagship like a hawk attacking a whale. Point defense systems tracked desperately, but the mining ship was too small, too fast, and flying too close to the flagship's own hull for the big guns to target without risking friendly fire. Energy beams scorched past their hull as threaded the needle between weapon emplacements, using the massive ship's own structure as cover. The Persistence skimmed along the flagship's ventral surface, its ancient hull groaning under the stress of high-speed atmospheric maneuvering. There, spotted what she was looking for, a section of the hull that showed the distinctive energy patterns of the ship's primary power coupling. Prep the excavation charges for immediate deployment. Captain, at this range, will either kill us or make us heroes, finished. Today seems like a good day for both. The mining ship's excavation system engaged with a sound like thunder. Designed to bore deep holes in solid rock, the system drove a tungsten carbide penetrator through the flagship's hull armor as if it were tissue paper. Behind the penetrator, a string of modified excavation charges followed, each one designed to explode in sequence, creating a shaped charge effect that would channel the blast deep into the ship's interior. Yanked the Persistence away from the flagship just as the charges detonated. The explosion that followed wasn't visible in space, but its effects were immediately apparent as the Dominion's Edge began to list to starboard, its bioluminescent hull flickering as power systems failed. Direct hit on their primary reactor coupling, Martinez reported incredulously. Their main engines are offline. But the flagship wasn't finished. Secondary batteries swiveled toward the Persistence and could see fighter craft streaming from the launch bays. They had wounded the giant, but it was far from dead. Captain's voice came over the intercom, strained but triumphant. I've been monitoring their power grid through the breach we created. Their entire electrical system is based on bioneural networks. Frowned, what does that mean for us? It means they're using living tissue to conduct power throughout their ship, and living tissue is susceptible to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Understanding dawned on his face. Do we still have those emergency medical beacons in storage? Yes, Captain. Full surgical spectrum emergency transmitters. Can you modify them to broadcast through the breach we created? There was a pause while the engineer considered the implications. Captain, if I overload the medical beacon transmitters and focus them through the hole we punched in their hull, the electromagnetic pulse should propagate through their bioneural network like a virus. Do it. As the modified medical beacons activated, the Dominion's Edge began to convulse. Its bioluminescent hull patterns became chaotic, random flashes of color as the ship's nervous system overloaded. Weapon systems powered down, artificial gravity failed, and the massive ship began to drift helplessly. Admiral's face appeared on screen one final time, his features twisted with rage and disbelief. Impossible! You are primitives, your technology is inferior, this cannot be happening. Looked at the crippled flagship, at the confused escort ships still trying to remove the cargo pods from their hulls, at the debris field that had been a proud cruiser just minutes before. Then she looked back at the alien admiral. Admiral, she said quietly, you keep using that word primitive like it's an insult, but primitive means simple, reliable, hard to break. You've built yourself a beautiful, advanced, complicated fleet, but we've built ourselves something better. And what is that? Demanded. Smiled, we built something that works. The transmission cut to static as the flagship's communication systems finally succumbed to the electromagnetic chaos ravaging its bioneural networks. In the sudden quiet that followed, became aware of her crew staring at her in stunned silence. They had just defeated an advanced alien fleet using mining equipment and medical supplies. It should have been impossible. Said calmly, can you get through to Earth Command now? Martinez checked his instruments. Yes, Captain. Their jamming grid went down when the flagship lost power. Good. Send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've encountered a hostile alien force in Sector 7G and that we've successfully defended ourselves. Request immediate reinforcement and salvage teams. Salvage teams? Martinez looked confused. Gestured toward the disabled ships. We're miners. When we find something valuable, we dig it up and take it home. and unless I'm mistaken, we just struck the richest vein in human history. 3 months later, Captain stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as the ship in the human fleet conducted its shakedown cruise. The vessel looked nothing like the sleek, elegant craft favored by other galactic civilizations. Instead, it resembled what it was: a fusion of human engineering pragmatism and salvage technology, bristling with weapon systems that shouldn't exist and powered by reactors that conventional physics. Captain, Commander Martinez called from his new position as first officer. Admiral is requesting a status report from the fleet. Nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the human task force spread across local space. 12 ships in total, each one a hybrid creation born from the wreckage of fleet and human ingenuity. The mining vessel Persistence hung in the center of the formation like a proud matriarch, her hull now reinforced with armor plating and equipped with weapon systems that made her original plasma cannons look like firecrackers. "Tell the Admiral that Task Force 7 is ready for deployment," replied. "All ships report nominal status." It had been an incredible 3 months. The capture of the fleet had provided Earth's engineers with their first real look at advanced galactic technology, and what they had found had changed everything. The aliens' bioneural networks, adaptive shielding, and exotic matter reactors were marvels of engineering, but they suffered from a critical flaw. They were designed by a civilization that had never faced serious opposition. Human engineers, on the other hand, had been designing systems to survive the impossible since the first human had looked at a broken machine and said, "I can fix that." Commander Martinez said, "Patch me through to the fleet." "All ships responding, Captain." Activated the fleet communication system, her voice carrying to every human vessel in the task force. "This is Captain. In 30 minutes, we'll be jumping to the 442 system to reinforce the colonists under siege there. Our intelligence indicates that a battle group of 20 ships is currently bombarding the civilian installations." She paused, looking out at the stars that had seemed so vast and threatening just months ago. The aliens expect another easy conquest. They expect the humans to surrender or die without meaningful resistance. They're about to learn that humans don't do easy. Across the fleet, crew members who had once been miners, freighter pilots, and station technicians prepared for their first real naval engagement. They were an unlikely armada by any standard, but they were human, and that made all the difference. The jump took 3 hours through hyperspace. Spent the time reviewing tactical reports and coordinating with the other ship commanders. Most of them were former civilian captains like herself, pressed into military service when Earth realized that conventional naval officers couldn't effectively command the hybrid vessels they had created. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, announced Lieutenant Park from the navigation station. Felt the familiar stomach lurch as the Defiance transitioned back into normal space. The tactical display immediately populated with contacts as the sensor array identified everything in the system. What they found was worse than the intelligence reports had suggested. "Sweet Jesus," Martinez whispered. "Captain, I count 37 ships, not 20, and they're not just bombarding the colony." Studied the display grimly. The alien fleet had formed a blockade around 442b, preventing any ships from reaching or leaving the planet. But more disturbing were the smaller contacts moving between the orbital installations and the planet's surface. "Troop transports," she realized. "They're not just conquering the colony, they're harvesting it." Doctor's voice came over the intercom from her new position as Fleet Medical Officer. "Captain, I'm picking up scattered civilian transmissions from the planet. They're reporting mass kidnappings. They are taking the colonists alive." Felt ice form in her stomach. The intelligence briefings had mentioned this tactic, the preferred to capture intact populations for use as labor forces on their agricultural worlds. 20,000 human civilians were currently being processed for shipment to alien farms. "Signal the fleet. Attack formation Charlie 7. We're going to punch a hole through their blockade and establish a defensive perimeter around the colony ships." "Captain," Martinez said quietly, "we're outnumbered 3-1, and these aren't surprised patrol ships, this is a full battle fleet." Smiled grimly. "What's the first thing they teach you about asteroid mining?" "Always expect the unexpected." "The biggest rocks make the loudest noise when they fall," corrected. "Signal the attack." The human task force accelerated toward the alien blockade like a pack of wolves attacking a herd of elk. The fleet began to react, their bioluminescent hulls shifting to aggressive patterns as they moved to intercept. But the humans weren't charging blindly into battle. 3 months of analyzing captured technology had revealed weaknesses in their adaptive systems. The aliens' shields and weapons automatically adjusted to counter known threats, but they struggled with completely new tactical approaches. And nobody created new tactical approaches like humans with their backs against the wall. "Activate the protocol," ordered. Throughout the human fleet, modified mining equipment came online. The hybrid ships suddenly sprouted clouds of metallic chaff, each particle equipped with miniature transmitters that broadcast false sensor signatures. To the targeting computers, it appeared as if the 12 human ships had suddenly become hundreds. The alien fleet's adaptive systems began cycling frantically, trying to identify real targets among the electronic ghosts. Their formation wavered as individual ships received conflicting target data. "Now commanded." The human ships opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Plasma cannons designed for asteroid mining had been married to energy-focusing systems, creating beams that could punch through conventional shields like they were soap bubbles. Mining charges loaded with exotic matter created gravitational distortions that wreaked havoc with alien navigation systems. But the most devastating weapon in the human arsenal was something no alien race had ever seen before: complete tactical unpredictability. The Defiance rolled inverted and dove beneath the plane of battle, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot around toward the alien command ship. The Persistence spread mining charges throughout local space, turning the battle zone into a minefield that moved according to no predictable pattern. Other human ships used modified cargo handling equipment to literally grab alien fighters and crush them like tin cans. "Captain," Martinez reported with barely controlled excitement, "we're disrupting their entire formation. They can't adapt to weapons and tactics they've never seen before." Nodded, watching as a cruiser fell victim to a modified mining laser that had been tuned to resonate with their hull material. The alien ship came apart like a crystal struck by a tuning fork, its advanced armor useless against an attack it had never been designed to counter. But the aliens were learning, and they had numerical superiority. As the battle progressed, the fleet began to adapt their formations to counter human unpredictability by spreading out and maintaining overlapping fields of fire. "Signal the Planetary Defense Force," ordered. "Tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation of all civilian personnel." "Captain," Doctor's voice came over the intercom, "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the alien fleet. I think they're preparing to glass the planet rather than lose the population." Felt cold fury wash over her. The aliens would rather commit genocide than allow their human captives to escape. It was the action of a species that saw other life forms as property to be disposed of when no longer useful. "Not on my watch," muttered. "Martinez, get me a direct channel to the alien commander." The main screen flickered to life, showing an admiral whose ceremonial scars marked him as even higher ranking than. His 4 eyes blazed with hatred as he regarded the human captain. "I am High Admiral of the Imperial Fleet," the alien announced. "You will cease this futile resistance immediately, or we will reduce your colony world to radioactive ash." Smiled coldly. "Admiral, I'm captain of the United Earth Defense Force. I have a counter-proposal." "Humans do not negotiate with their superiors," replied dismissively. "You're right," agreed. "We don't negotiate with people who threaten to murder civilians, we just kill them." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Park, are the quantum charges ready?" "Yes, Captain. All 12 devices are armed and positioned." Had hoped it wouldn't come to this. The quantum charges were a desperate weapon created by combining human mining charges with exotic matter from the captured ships. The theoretical yield was enormous, but the practical effects were completely unknown. "Signal the fleet. Initiate Operation Broken Arrow." Throughout local space, human ships suddenly accelerated away from the alien fleet at maximum velocity. The, confused by the apparent retreat, began to pursue while simultaneously charging their planet-killing weapons. They were too focused on their targets to notice the small objects that had been quietly planted throughout their formation during the battle. "Detonation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Park announced. Had expected explosions. What she got instead was something far more dramatic. The quantum charges didn't simply explode. They created localized space-time distortions that turned the laws of physics into suggestions. Ships found themselves suddenly experiencing gravity that pulled in 6 different directions simultaneously. Energy weapons fired in straight lines that curved back to hit their own targets. Several alien vessels simply ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. Their matter transformed into exotic particles that shouldn't have been stable in normal space. When the distortions finally collapsed, more than half the alien fleet had been destroyed or rendered inoperable. The surviving ships hung in space like broken toys, their crews struggling to understand what had just happened to them. High Admiral appeared on screen again, his arrogant composure replaced by something approaching terror. "What have you done? Those weapons violate every known law of physics." Smiled, "Admiral, let me explain something about human weapons design. We don't let the laws of physics tell us what's impossible. We just find ways around them." She leaned forward in her captain's chair. "Now, you have exactly 60 seconds to signal your unconditional surrender and begin evacuating your troops from the planet's surface. If you refuse, we'll demonstrate some other laws of physics that we've recently rewritten." The alien admiral's image flickered as his communication systems struggled with the exotic radiation still permeating local space. "This is impossible. Your species is primitive. Your technology is inferior." "Admiral," said quietly, "you really need to stop saying that. It's not working out well for you." 63 seconds later, the remaining ships began broadcasting surrender signals. Stood on the bridge of the Defiant 6 hours later, watching as human evacuation ships the last civilians up from 442B. The prisoners were being held in the cargo bays of their own ships, guarded by Marines who had learned their tactics fighting space pirates rather than attending military academies. "Captain," Martinez reported, "Earth Command is requesting a full tactical summary for transmission to the Galactic Council." Nodded, word of the human victory had already begun to spread through galactic communication networks. Species that had been conquered by were quietly reaching out to Earth, asking questions about human defensive capabilities and the possibility of mutual defense agreements. "Prepare a message for the Galactic Council. Tell them that Earth formally requests a review of the Empire's aggressive expansion policies, and that we're prepared to assist any species seeking to defend themselves against future attacks." She paused, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed quite so vast or threatening. Somewhere out there, other alien civilizations were receiving the news that a species armed with primitive technology and impossible weapons had just defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Smiled, let them call humans primitive. Let them dismiss Earth's ramshackle fleet of hybrid warships and improvised weapons. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans said something was impossible, it usually just meant they hadn't figured out how to do it yet. And once humans figured out how to do something, they had a disturbing tendency to get very good at it very quickly. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human ingenuity had just begun. Admiral, sitting in his detention cell aboard the Persistence, watched through the viewport as human ships continued to arrive in the system. Each one was different, each one bristling with weapons that shouldn't work and armor that conventional engineering principles. He had spent his entire career conquering civilizations that built beautiful, logical, efficient military machines. It had never occurred to him that the most dangerous enemy might be a species that built ugly, illogical, impossibly effective ones. Outside his cell, he could hear human crew members discussing modifications to the ship's weapon systems, talking about new ways to combine technologies that had never been meant to work together. They spoke of impossibilities as if they were engineering challenges, of physical laws as if they were suggestions to be ignored when inconvenient. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral began to understand what the humans meant when they talked about the size of the fight in the dog. And he began to suspect that the galaxy was about to find out exactly how much fight the human species actually had in them.